Blake Lively is taking Perez Hilton to trial? Oh, we got to talk about this. Walk me through that. What was that like when you got your subpoena finally? I know it took him a little longer. What was that like when you suddenly realized Blake Lively was personally subpoenaing you?
Well, what's interesting is I found out that I was subpoenaed by reading a TMZ article.
Me too. Funny how that happened. Here it is. Yeah.
If you Google me and you look up what is Perez Hilton worth, that's not real.
That's never real. Correct.
Not even close to that. Okay. If I was worth what the internet thinks that I'm worth, I would 100% have paid for one of Brian Friedman's lawyers to handle this. Oh, $25K. That's nothing or whatever. So for me, I didn't want to GoFundMe or crowdsource or whatever it is, because to me, it would have just invited too much criticism that I don't want.
What happens when a Hollywood A-lister decides to drag a celebrity blogger into federal court? Blake Lively has subpoenaed Perez Hilton personally. Not just his content, but him. And his response? I'm a clown, but I'm not an idiot. This isn't just another celebrity feud. This is a calculated legal chess match where Perez admits he wanted the judge to hate him, where home addresses of content creators are being exposed in public court documents, where death threats and arson attempts have already escalated this case beyond anything we've seen before. Could this strategic chaos actually work in Perez's favor? Or has Blake Lively found the perfect way to silence her critics forever? Make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay with us, because what we're about to reveal will shock you. Here's where this story gets absolutely insane. Blake Lively didn't just file a lawsuit. She personally subpoenaed multiple content creators, including Perez Hilton, Andy Signore, and Candace Owens. This wasn't about getting their YouTube data or requesting they take down videos. This was personal service, demanding they appear in federal court as if they were defendants in a criminal case. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming and exposes the calculated nature of Blake's entire strategy. Perez found out he was being subpoenaed the same way we all did, by reading TMZ on July 1st. The headline was deliberately misleading, claiming these creators had already been subpoenaed when they hadn't actually been served yet. But think about this for a moment. How exactly did TMZ get that information? Someone from Blake's legal team was leaking details to media outlets before the legal process was even completed. That's not normal legal procedure. That's media manipulation disguised as legal action. The TMZ article served a dual purpose. It put these content creators on public notice that they were targets, and it began the narrative that they were somehow dodging service or evading responsibility. Blake's team was already controlling the story before the first legal document was even delivered. The TMZ article dropped on July 1st, but Perez wasn't actually served until July 19th. That's nearly 3 weeks of psychological warfare, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And during those 3 weeks, something truly disturbing was happening that reveals the invasive nature of Blake's legal strategy.
Week of July, that a process server came to my house, and I'm like, what the F? How'd they find my address? Because it's not easy to find where I live. And then I wasn't purposefully evading being served. It just so happened that I wasn't. And the times that he came, my mom was here, and I've always told my mom, don't answer the door to strangers. And she's like, oh, this. And I didn't tell my mom what was going on. So I'm glad she didn't open it, because I don't want to have her to have to deal with any of this and being confused, and she doesn't speak English that well. So she's like, oh, this guy came, and I didn't open the door because I wasn't expecting anybody. I'm like, oh, okay, good. If anybody ever comes, remember, don't open the door. So I'm like, oh, I think Blake Lively might have found my address and is trying to serve me. Then on Friday, I remember it all. On Friday, July 18th, Blake Lively's lawyers submitted an affidavit of service in the public docket in Judge Lyman's court. And I forget who it was. I think it was some woman actually it might've been two different people, but at least one woman in California. She's like, oh, we attempted to serve this subpoena and we couldn't serve her subpoena. And this is the address that we served it to, or attempted to serve it to. And that just triggered real fear and anxiety in me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm next. Because she had already told the judge the week prior that I had not been served, but that I had been put on notice, and that they were gonna, file a request for alternative means as they had previously. And that on Friday the 18th, they put this woman's address up on the docket. I thought, oh my God, I'm next. She's going to publicly, intentionally cruelly put my home address, which I work very hard to protect.
Yeah, as we all do. Yep.
On this public docket, in a case where there have been kidnap threats, where there has been an arson related to this, where multiple people, parties and non-parties, have received death threats. So I was legitimately, not exaggeratingly, not for attention, alarmed, concerned, and worried for the safety of not just me and my mother, but my 3 minor children. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So that was the reason, and the only reason, that I personally reached out to her lawyers and said, hey, I see you're trying to serve me. I will accept. And then as soon as that happened, as soon as I was served by email, I then filed a motion for a protective order with Judge Lyman to make sure under no circumstance was my home address entered into the public docket, because
Got it.
repeatedly,
Yeah.
Blake Lively's lawyers had
They don't care.
They had the ability. They could have filed non-parties' home addresses under seal for the court to see, and then a redacted version in the public docket, and they didn't do that. And I was really worried they would do that for me. So that's the beginning of it all. And I was served July 19th, Saturday, and now it's been ongoing since then with a lot of drama.
Yeah, it's weird
and
'cause it's
handling
like-
it all myself.
I know I got questions, but I know you were sort of like, I'm so excited. And I kind of was excited too. Like, oh, we're in the news, but I don't know about you. It's not that exciting. It's kind of stressful. It's actually way more, annoying. What is the reality now that you're facing it? I know we don't want to admit to Blake that she's won and she's annoyed us, but I'll admit it. It's annoying. What do you really feel about it?
Absolutely. I want to tap out. I am excited for a hopeful resolution next week, because I'm ready to tap out. I'm ready to be done. This has been, draining. It's taken so much of my time, energy, me away from my kids, away from my day job. And, over the last month, I am the hardest working person I know. It's that Cuban work ethic. It's that Latino mentality, the grinding, and I've always been able to soldier through and grind and grind and grind. But some of these days, especially when I've been having to, prepare my motion to quash or prepare my response to this, at the end of the day, my body just shut down. I couldn't continue. It's just that next level, beyond tired, empty, spent. And I still feel that way. And obsessing, I don't know if you've been feeling this, but it's like I'm in the shower and I can't stop thinking about this and playing out all the potential scenarios. Okay, this and then that, and then, oh, if that happens, then I can do this. And it's all consuming, and I'm ready to be done.
Well, I mean, I was lucky enough. We did raise funds through my audience. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to do it, because, and our lawyers did step up. I've had the luxury of having lawyers, and I found lawyers that were not insanely expensive.
That. I respect that you did, but for me, I just know. Well, first,
Process servers were hunting Perez at his protected home address, an address that's supposedly hard to find and well guarded for security reasons. Think about what this means. Blake's legal team had somehow obtained private residential information for content creators and was dispatching strangers to show up at their homes unannounced. His elderly Cuban mother, who barely speaks English, was turning away strangers at the door while having no idea her son was about to become the center of a federal court battle. Perez had always told his mother never to answer the door to strangers, and thank goodness she followed that advice. But imagine the stress and confusion this created for an elderly woman who didn't understand why mysterious men were repeatedly showing up at her home asking for her son. This pattern continued for multiple attempts. Each time the process server came, Perez happened to be away, and his mother refused to open the door. Blake's legal team could have used alternative service methods, but they seemed determined to physically intrude on his private residence. But here's where Blake Lively's legal strategy took a dark turn that goes far beyond normal litigation tactics and reveals the true intent behind these subpoenas. On Friday, July 18th, her lawyers filed an affidavit of service in Judge Lyman's public court docket when they couldn't serve another woman in California, someone who was also just a content creator expressing opinions. They didn't follow standard legal protocols. They didn't file a sealed motion explaining their difficulties. They didn't request alternative service methods privately. Instead, They put this woman's actual home address right there in the public court record for anyone in the world to see, download, and use. Let that sink in for a moment. In a case that had already involved kidnapping threats against parties involved, where there had been an arson incident directly related to this controversy, where multiple people both connected and unconnected to the case had received death threats, Blake's legal team was making private home addresses part of the public court record, accessible to anyone with an internet connection. This wasn't an accident or an oversight. This was a deliberate choice. The legal system has well-established procedures for protecting personal information. Blake's lawyers could have easily filed home addresses under seal for the court to review, with redacted versions made available in the public docket. Every competent attorney knows how to do this, but they chose not to. They chose the nuclear option of complete public exposure, knowing full well that this information would be permanently accessible online and could be used by anyone with malicious intent. That's when genuine terror set in for Perez. This wasn't about legal strategy anymore. This was about weaponizing the court system to intimidate and endanger critics. He realized that Blake's lawyers had every intention of doing the same thing to him, exposing his home address, where he lives with his 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and 7-year-old children, in a public court document that anyone could access online forever. The implications were staggering. Not only would his address be public, but it would be associated with a high-profile celebrity lawsuit involving death, threats, and violence. Any unstable person obsessed with Blake Lively or angry about the controversy could easily find where Perez and his children lived. Perez began to understand that this wasn't really about compelling his testimony or getting information for Blake's case. This was about sending a message to every content creator who had criticized her. We know where you live, and we're willing to make that information public. The legal system has procedures for this exact situation. Blake's lawyers could have filed home addresses under seal for the court to see, with redacted versions in the public docket, but they chose not to do that. They chose the nuclear option of public exposure, apparently believing that the threat of doxing would be more effective than actual legal arguments. That's when Perez made a decision that would change everything and set up his entire counterattack strategy. He reached out to Blake's lawyers himself and agreed to accept service by email. Not because he was scared of the legal fight. Perez has never backed down from controversy. He did it because he was terrified for his children's safety and refused to let Blake's legal team use his family as collateral damage in her reputation management campaign. The moment he was served on Saturday, July 19th, he immediately filed a motion for a protective order with Judge Lyman, demanding that under no circumstances should his home address or personal information ever enter the public record. He detailed the threats, the arson, the dangerous precedent Blake's team was setting. But here's what makes Perez's response so strategically brilliant. Accepting that subpoena wasn't surrender. It was the opening move in a legal chess game that would expose the bias, corruption, and intimidation tactics Blake's team was using. Because what happened next reveals whether the courts would protect content creators from celebrity intimidation, or whether judges would become willing participants in silencing criticism through legal warfare. And Judge Lyman's response to Perez's reasonable request for basic safety protections would reveal everything about whose side the court system is really on. But accepting that subpoena was just the beginning of Perez's master plan, because what happened next reveals the true genius or madness of his strategy to turn Blake's own legal weapons against her. Let's rewind for a second and understand how we got here, because the timeline reveals everything about Blake's legal strategy. This all traces back to the "It Ends With Us" controversy that exploded in August 2024. Blake Lively faced massive backlash over her promotional campaign for the domestic violence film. Everything from tone-deaf interviews to allegations about her behavior on set with director Justin Baldoni. The controversy wasn't manufactured by bloggers or content creators. It started with Blake's own public statements and actions. She promoted a domestic violence film by focusing on her fashion, line, and making lighthearted comments that many found inappropriate for such a serious subject matter. Social media users began pointing out problematic aspects of her past, including her wedding at a former plantation and admissions of doing blackface. Perez Hilton was actually one of the first major content creators to cover this story extensively, and here's why that matters. Blake Lively has been his target demographic for decades. His audience is overwhelmingly female and around her age. He was even mentioned multiple times on Gossip Girl, the show that made Blake famous. This wasn't some random attack. It was organic coverage of a story his audience cared deeply about. Here's the crucial part that Blake's legal team doesn't want you to know. Initially, when Blake filed her complaint in December 2024 and the New York Times article came out supporting her version of events, Perez actually believed her and supported her publicly. You can still find those videos on his YouTube channel if you search for Blake Lively content from December 2024. But then Perez read Justin Baldoni's lawsuit response. He saw the unedited text messages between Blake and Justin. He reviewed volumes of emails that painted a completely different picture of what happened on that movie set. And like any reasonable person presented with new new evidence, he changed his mind. That's when Perez realized he wasn't looking at a victim of harassment. He was looking at what appeared to be a calculated smear campaign against Justin Baldoni, and he decided he didn't want to be on the side of what he perceived as the oppressor. By December 2024, Blake had filed her major lawsuit, claiming she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign that began in August 2024 and was in full effect by December. Content creators like Perez, Candace Owens, and Andy Signore were painted as willing participants in this alleged conspiracy to destroy her reputation. But the evidence Perez discovered suggests that narrative is not just wrong, it's deliberately false. This is where Perez's strategy gets absolutely brilliant and completely insane. He discovered text messages that don't just undermine Blake's timeline, they completely obliterate it. And when he revealed these messages, it exposed what might be one of the most audacious false narratives ever presented in a federal courtroom. Here are the facts that Blake's legal team hoped would never see the light of day. In August 2024, when Perez began his extensive coverage of the "It Ends With Us" controversy, Justin Baldoni's crisis communications expert Melissa Nathan was texting about Perez behind the scenes. Her exact words? "He's irrelevant. Nobody reads him past 2005. He doesn't generate headlines. He's a loser, a has-been, a troll." Those weren't private opinions. They were entered as evidence in the court record. Melissa Nathan, the person allegedly orchestrating this supposed smear campaign against Blake, thought Perez was so worthless that she didn't even consider him worth engaging with. But fast forward to January 21st, 2025. This is months after Blake had already filed her lawsuit claiming a coordinated smear campaign was in full effect since August 2024. Suddenly, those same PR experts were sending entirely different messages. Does anybody know how to get in touch with Perez? His coverage has been getting pickup and momentum. He's been doing good coverage. Let that timeline sink in. Blake's legal team is claiming Perez was part of an orchestrated attack against her that began in August 2024. But the evidence shows that the people supposedly running this campaign weren't even trying to contact Perez until January 2025, after her lawsuit was already filed. In simple terms, this means Blake's entire legal theory is built on a foundation of lies. No one paid Perez to criticize her. No one coordinated with him. No one even wanted to work with him until he had already formed his own independent opinions based on publicly available evidence. But here's where Perez's counterattack gets truly masterful. He admits he became a strategic hot mess on purpose in his court filings. While other content creators were being respectful and measured, Perez was filing motions calling Blake names, using inflammatory language, and generally making himself as annoying as possible to Judge Lyman. Why would he do something so seemingly self-destructive? Because Perez was playing a much deeper game. He wanted to draw attention to what he saw as clear judicial bias. He wanted to be the squeaky wheel that made so much noise the judge would either dismiss him or become so obviously prejudiced that it would destroy any claim to impartial justice. His legal theory is actually quite sophisticated. If he can prove the New York judge is biased against him personally, that judge loses the moral and legal authority to have jurisdiction over him. It's risky, it's unconventional, and it's exactly the kind of move that could either be genius or completely backfire. The jurisdiction battle is absolutely crucial here. Perez has no ties to New York whatsoever. He lives in Nevada. His business is in Nevada, and he's arguing that Nevada courts should handle his case. If he wins that argument, Blake's team would have to start over in a completely different court system with different rules and potentially different outcomes. But Judge Lyman has been making moves that suggest Perez's strategy might actually be working. The judge initially denied Perez's request for a protective order to keep his personal information sealed. Only after Perez made a public spectacle and drew media attention did the court start requiring all parties to redact personal addresses from public filings. Even more telling, Judge Lyman forced Perez to respond to Blake's motion to compel in New York court, even though the judge knew he had no jurisdiction over Perez. The judge literally said Blake had the right to make this argument, and if Perez didn't respond, he would rule without opposition. That's not how jurisdiction works. You either have it or you don't. Making someone respond to arguments in a court that has no authority over them is exactly the kind of judicial overreach that could get a ruling overturned on appeal. This case is setting dangerous precedents that could fundamentally change how celebrities interact with independent media. When A-list stars can subpoena content creators personally, demand access to their private communications, and potentially expose their home addresses in public court records, it creates a chilling effect that goes far beyond this single lawsuit. Think about the broader implications here. If Blake Lively succeeds in this legal strategy, what stops every celebrity with expensive lawyers from doing the same thing? We could see an avalanche of lawsuits designed not to win on the merits, but to silence critics through legal intimidation and financial exhaustion. The economics of this situation reveal the true power imbalance. Perez is representing himself because he simply cannot afford the $25,000 minimum it would cost for proper legal representation in a case like this. Despite internet speculation about about his wealth, he's made it clear that those estimates are wildly inflated. Most independent content creators are in exactly the same boat. They have platforms and audiences, but they don't have Hollywood money to fight prolonged legal battles. This could be the blueprint for wealthy celebrities to systematically silence independent media voices, file personal subpoenas, drag creators into expensive litigation in distant courts, make them choose between bankruptcy and silence. It's legal warfare designed to exhaust resources rather than establish truth. The hearing in Nevada this Thursday could change the entire trajectory of this case and set precedent for future disputes. If Perez wins on jurisdiction, it sends a powerful message that content creators have some protection from being dragged into expensive legal battles in courts far from their homes. It establishes that celebrities can't just forum shop to find judges who might be more sympathetic to their causes. But if Perez loses this jurisdictional challenge, it could open the floodgates for similar tactics against other independent creators. Every celebrity with a good lawyer and a bad reputation could start using the courts as weapons to silence criticism. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. Perez initially filed for protective orders to keep his family's personal information sealed, and Judge Lyman denied those requests. The judge essentially told Perez that he should have known about existing protective order procedures, placing the burden on non-parties without legal representation to navigate complex federal court rules. Only after Perez made his situation public and drew media attention did the court start requiring all parties to redact personal information from public documents. That suggests the system only works when there's enough public pressure to force accountability. The most chilling aspect of this entire case is how it reveals the two-tiered nature of our justice system. When celebrities file lawsuits, they get immediate media coverage and sympathetic treatment. When content creators try to defend themselves, they're painted as harassers and troublemakers, even when they're responding to legal attacks. Blake's legal team has tried to frame Perez's criticism as part of a coordinated harassment campaign, but the evidence shows something completely different. His opinions were formed by Blake's own public statements and actions: her plantation wedding, her admission to blackface, her dismissive treatment of journalists asking about her pregnancy. And if this case moves forward as Blake intends, it could establish a legal precedent that celebrities can retroactively claim that any criticism of their public behavior constitutes harassment, even when that criticism is based on their own documented words and actions. The stakes couldn't be higher for independent media. This isn't just about Blake Lively versus Perez Hilton. This is about whether wealthy public figures can use the legal system to systematically silence criticism and reshape public discourse in their favor. What do you think about these legal tactics? Should celebrities be able to subpoena content creators for expressing opinions about their public behavior? Is Perez's chaotic strategy brilliant or reckless? And most importantly, what does this case reveal about the future of independent media and free speech in America? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is far from over, and your voice matters in this conversation about the balance between celebrity privacy and the public's right to criticism. The outcome of Thursday's hearing in Nevada could determine whether independent creators can continue holding public figures accountable, or whether the courts will become another tool for the wealthy and powerful to silence their critics. This has been your complete breakdown of the Blake Lively versus Perez Hilton legal battle that's reshaping the landscape of celebrity criticism and independent media. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because when that Nevada hearing happens this Thursday, you'll want to be the first to know what goes down. The future of content creation and free speech might just depend on it.